Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Sooah Park. I'm an assistant professor of music at University of Texas at Tyler. Thank you very much for watching my lecture video on Sibelius songs. Sibelius is famous for his orchestral works, but his songs are not as well known. I was an exchange student at Sibelius Academy in Finland in 2009. At Sibelius Academy, I was introduced to Sibelius songs for the first time. Sibelius songs were standard literature performed very often in Finland. I was struck by the fact that Sibelius was a prolific song composer, and I had not known or heard any of his Sibelius songs before. I hope that this video will be a good introduction of his songs to you, especially for those who are not familiar with his songs. John Sibelius was born on December 8, 1865, into a Finland-Swedish family in Hämeenlinna in the Russian Grand Duchy of Finland. The room you are looking at is where Sibelius was born. He is considered Finland's greatest composer who led Finnish nationalism during the nation's struggle for independence from Russia. For that reason, Sibelius is still the national heroic figure in Finland. While I was in Finland, I noticed many places were named after Sibelius to pay respect to his achievements. Now you're looking at Sibelius' childhood house. His father died when Sibelius was 2 years old and left substantial debts. He grew up at a time when Finland was fighting for independence from Russia. His family consciously decided to send Sibelius to an important Finnish language school. This was a part of the larger rise in Finland of Romantic nationalism. Romantic nationalism became a vital element in his artistic output and political leanings later on. These are the instruments belonging to the Sibelius family. Sibelius did not start formal piano lessons until he was 9. He became famous as a violinist at the age of 15. However, he abandoned his aspirations with violin as he developed his interest in composition. Sibelius joined the law school at Imperial Alexander University of Finland in 1885. However, he soon quit studies to pursue his interests in music. John Sibelius was married to Aino Jenefelt and fathered 6 daughters. The Sibelius family moved to their new home Ainola, named after his wife Aino, on Lake Tuusula, Järvenpää, in 1904. Sibelius adored nature, especially Finnish landscapes, and composed many pieces inspired by nature's beauty. The picture you are looking at is Aulanko, the inspiration for Sibelius' Finlandia. This is the picture of Ainola, which I visited in 2009 and 2015. Sibelius and his wife Aino built Ainola in 1904. They moved back to Ainola in 1941 and stayed there until his death in 1957. Now Ainola is a museum for tourists to visit. His best-known compositions include Finlandia, the Violin Concerto, and 7 symphonies. Sibelius composed prolifically until the mid-1920s, and the 7th symphony is the pinnacle of his orchestral compositions. After completing his 7th symphony, he failed to produce any major works in his last 30 years. And this sharp decline during his last 30 years is often referred as the silence of Järvenpää, the location of his home. He believed that he wouldn't be able to compose a symphony better than the 7th one. For several years, he worked on an Eighth Symphony secretly, but he destroyed the manuscripts of his work. Sibelius' orchestra works were influenced by Busoni and Tchaikovsky. His song, Flickan kommer från sin älsklingsmöte, displays Tchaikovsky's influence on his compositional style. Sibelius is considered the last greatest composer in the grand Beethoven symphonic tradition. Sibelius developed a technique called a pedal, which is a long sustained note underneath a simple harmonization for his orchestra works. This technique was often used in his songs as well. For example, his first song, Arioso, has a pedal throughout. However, this style does not serve well for a piano accompaniment, but works really well with strings. Sibelius died of a brain hemorrhage at the age of 91 at his house Ainola in 1957. Still today, Sibelius is a Finnish national icon. Finns love Sibelius. They celebrate the composer's birthday, play and promote his music frequently, build his statues all over the country, put his image on coins, name places after him, and in many other numerous ways. Sibelius is the patriotic symbol in Finland. Now, let's move on to his songs. 94 songs out of 110 Sibelius songs are composed in the Swedish language. At this fact, we can't help raising our eyebrows because Sibelius is known to us as the Finnish nationalist composer. There are a few important historic facts to learn in order to answer the question about the majority of Sibelius songs being written in Swedish. Finland belonged to Sweden for 6 centuries. Then Alexander I, Emperor of Russia, defeated Swedish troops in Finland in 1808 and declared Finland as an autonomous Grand Duchy of Russia. The Finnish language and the national awakening were developed under the Russian emperors as a part of their colonial plan. Alexander II especially encouraged Finns to find their national identity, and the nation thrived under his rule. Even after Finland became Russia's Grand Duchy, there was a small group of Swedish immigrants still remaining in Finland as an upper class. Ironically, Swedish people in Finland were the ones who developed the Finnish language, identity, and a national awakening. Before 1863, a couple of years before Sibelius was born, Swedish was the sole language used in administration, public institutions, education, and cultural life in Finland. In 1863, Finnish gained an official position in administration. However, it took another 30 years for it to be seen as equal to the official status of Swedish. Sibelius' family was part of the Swedish-speaking upper class in Finland. Sibelius grew up speaking Swedish at home, and Swedish was his primary language throughout his life. Because the Swedish upper class in Finland laid the foundations of Finnish identity, the majority of the Finnish nationalist literatures were written in Swedish. Swedish speakers were a minority in Finland. However, their influence was great. Kimborg, a celebrated Finnish bass, explained in his article that Swedish was better established than Finnish as a literary form around the Sibelius time. Despite the fact that Sibelius was a prolific song composer and his songs deserve an international reputation, his songs have hardly been performed outside of Scandinavian countries. His songs were completely overshadowed by his orchestral works. Sibelius' songs still remain veiled in mystery, primarily because of the Swedish text used to create them. Sibelius developed his own idioms for his songwritings, which may sound unconventional to an audience who's accustomed to German lieder or French melodies. For songs by composers like Wolf, Brahms, Fauré, or Debussy, words dominate the musical setting. However, Sibelius absorbed an overall impression of a given poem and expressed a broad atmosphere by employing repeated motifs and broad musical structures. Sibelius' characteristic vocal writing originated from his orchestral compositional style, especially that of his tone poems. The vast idea of a program creates an overall expression throughout the music without focusing on the importance of individual words in a poem. Valerie Siren in the Sibelius Companion describes Sibelius' unique vocal writing. Quote, "In contrast to the usual techniques of word painting and musical coloring of feeling, Sibelius' songs are plastic. The words, vocal line, and piano part fuse to create a single impression. The relationship of the poem to the music in Sibelius' songs is quite different from the songs of other composers. Like his orchestra tone poems, the poem provides a program rather than the verses to be spoken." End quote. According to Santori Levis, Sibelius' longtime secretary, Sibelius himself said, quote, "My songs can also be sung without words. They are not so dependent on words as the songs of many other composers." End quote. In some sense, Sibelius' vocal writing reminds listeners of Beethoven's. Both men were renowned symphonic composers, but they were not very sympathetic to the human voice when they composed the songs. Kimborg further explained in his article, quote, "Singers very often shake their heads at composers who do not seem to be aware of the limitations of the human voice. It is also quite possible that the composer's unorthodox writing horrifies many Orthodox souls, especially in the German-speaking world." End quote. Sibelius and Beethoven shared a common interest in vocal writing, using wide vocal ranges, angular vocal lines, bold intervals, and instrumental vocal writing. This compositional style intensifies the drama and emphasizes conflict with a full force. However, Sibelius' writing style seemed to work more cohesively on a bigger canvas, such as symphonies rather than songs. Later in the program, I will compare Beethoven's Die Ehre Gottes aus der Natur from 6 Sacred Songs and Sibelius' Arioso. Sibelius was closely associated with Finland's Swedish-speaking nobility and upper-class poets, many of whom were active in the nationalist movement. Josef Julius Wexel and Johann Ludwig Runeberg were the Swedish-speaking nobilities who were leaders of Finnish cultural and political awakening movements. Sibelius used their poems heavily for his songs. The most famous Sibelius songs were written to text by Wexel and Rundberg. Rudberg and Fröding were not Swedish-speaking upper class in Finland, but Swedish poets from Sweden. Sibelius also used their poems quite a bit. Today, I would like to pay special attention to Johann Ludwig Rundberg. Rundberg was a patriotic poet who wrote the tales of Ensign Ståhl in Swedish. This book particularly constructed a Finnish identity and defined the lives of the Finns. In Finland, the people pay him much respect with statues, a museum, and a day in his honor. He wrote about nature, religion, and patriotism in a highly romantic style. His poems were in short lines, simple words, and easy forms, which made his poems suitable for songs. Throughout his life, Sibelius was under Rundberg's strong influence for his composition, especially his songs. Both Sibelius and Rundberg wrote their works in Swedish and identified themselves as Finns. Together with the work of Rundberg, Sibelius' music is synonymous with Finnish national identity. The first selection of Sibelius' song is Säv Säv Sooah. The poem is by Gustaf Fröding, a Swedish poet from Sweden. The poem was written in Swedish. It is quasi-recitative in style, one of Sibelius' pillar characteristics for his songs. Sibelius was a genius at composing songs with dramatic stories, and this song is a perfect example. In this poem, a girl named Ingalill committed suicide because her friends were jealous of her youth, wealth, beauty, and her young lover. This is the middle section of Säv Säv Sooah. What you are looking at is the voice part in quasi-recitative style, while the piano accompaniment plays tremolo. However, this recitative is different from the typical Italian recitativo, which gives more speaking quality. Sibelius' quasi-recitative style is more melodic and more singing than speaking, which mirrors linguistic qualities of the Swedish language. The next two slides are the translation of Säv Säv Sooah. Let me read the translation for you. Sigh rushes sigh. Sigh rushes sigh, beat waves beat. Are you trying to reveal the fate of young Ingalill? She cried like a winged duck as she sank in the lake last spring when then was at its greenest. They were envious of her in Östanulid, and she took it to heart. They begrudged her riches and her young love. They pierced a jewel with a thorn. They cast dirt in a lily's dew. So sing your dirge, sad wavelets. Sigh rushes sigh. Beat waves beat. Now I'm going to play the video of my performance at Penn State University. Dr. Bradley Baker is at the piano in this video.
Is
The second selection is Arioso. Arioso is the first song Sibelius composed. The poem was written by Johann Ludwig Runeberg in Swedish. This piece displays Sibelius' instrumental approach to vocal writing, which is very similar to Beethoven's songwriting style. So we will compare Sibelius' Arioso to Beethoven's Die Ehre Gottes aus der Natur for your better understanding of this subject. Both songs have very similar characteristics in terms of wide vocal ranges, angular vocal lines, bold intervals, and instrumental vocal writing. Let's look at Beethoven's Die Ehre Gottes aus der Natur first. You can see the melody in this song is very angular and has wide leaps, especially at the beginning and the end. Instead of providing vocal lines with lyricism, Beethoven treated the voice part as if it is a part of the chord progression on piano. This piece would work better with strings because the piano cannot sustain sounds as continuously as string instruments can. As we listen to an excerpt from a recording sung by Jesse Norman, you will be able to hear now Beethoven's vocal writing is somewhat unkind to the human voice. One of Sibelius' most significant attributes for orchestra writing, a pedal point, appears constantly throughout Arioso. He composed Arioso for voice and piano initially, and then orchestrated a few years later. Because of the pedal notes, it works much better with an orchestra. Let's listen to an excerpt from Arioso where you can hear pedal point. This recording is sung by Karita Mattila, one of the most renowned Finnish sopranos. Like Beethoven, Sibelius also wrote a very dry melody and treated the voice as if it is a part of the chord progressions on piano. From this slide, you can see that the voice line has a 16th leap from A5 to D-sharp 4. This kind of interval is very unusual for vocal writing. Sibelius was also unkind to the human voice, at least in Arioso. Let's listen to Karita Mattila's Arioso again, where you can hear the 16th leaping interval. This is the end of Arioso. The song finishes very suddenly like many other songs by Sibelius. This gives unsettling feeling for listeners at times. Let me play the end of Arioso. Again, this is Carita Matila singing. Now, let me read the translation for you. Arioso. One winter morning, the girl walked in the frost-strewn grove, saw a withered rose and said, "Do not lament, poor flower, that your happy time is over. You have lived, you have delighted, you have possessed your joyous spring before the winter cold reached you. My heart suffers a worse fate. It holds spring and winter at once. My lover's eyes are its spring day. My mother's are its winter." Our third selection is Vardet en Dröm. I was extremely attracted to this song when I first heard it at Sibelius Academy. The beauty of this song fascinated me and led me to more Sibelius songs thereafter. The poem is written by Wexel in Swedish. The majority of his songs are about nature. This song is one of the few love songs Sibelius composed. This is the first page of Vardet en Dröm. It shows that the song acts as a perfect example of Sibelius' songwriting style of music expressing an overall atmosphere without being bound to individual words. Piano accompaniment repeats the same motif, such as an endless arpeggio and a 4-against-3 structures to create an overall dreamy mood. Let me read the translation of the song for you. Was it a dream? Was it a dream that for a sweet moment I was your heart's love? I remember it as a silent song, of which the strings still quiver. I remember a thorn rose you tossed, a glance so modest and tender. I remember a sparkling tear of farewell. Was it all? Was it all a dream? A dream like primrose's short life, out in a spring green meadow, whose beauty soon fades away for new flowers. But many nights I hear a voice through a flood of bitter tears. Hide this memory deep in your heart. It was your best dream. The following video is a performance by Dr. Sooah Park and Dr. Bradley Baker at Penn State University. Illale is a Finnish word which means to evening. The poet is Ave Forsman Koskimies, and his wife's name was also Illale. The poem can be about an evening, but my guess is that poet symbolized his wife, Illale, in this poem. Sibelius composed his songs mostly in Swedish. This song is one of 8 Finnish songs Sibelius composed. Sibelius was very sensitive to the setting of Finnish language, which sounds monotonous. As a result, he wrote repeated notes to imitate the inflection of the language. He wrote 73 E-flat 5s and 13 F5s, a total of 86 transitional notes of chest to head. It is an excessive number of transitional notes for one song. This is a great example that Sibelius did not quite understand or was unsympathetic to the human voice. In the next 2 slides, I laid out verses so you can see the rhyming pattern of the poem. The poet carefully placed the rhymes to match. Considering Finnish had not yet developed as a literary form, the poet did a good job with placing beautiful rhythms and rhymes to it. Now, let me read the translation to you before you listen to the song. To evening. Welcome dark, mild, and starry evening. Your gentle fervor I adore and caress the dark tresses that flutter round your brow. If only you were the magic bridge that would wrap my soul away to the land of idols, though I waver and my wings are earthbound. And if I myself were the happy day that, overcome with weariness, might join you when work is over and duty done. When night unfolds its black wings and a gray curtain falls over hill and dale, evening, how I would hurry to you. What a wonderful poem. Now let's watch the performance video of Illale. Sibelius used word painting technique in this song. Out of all Sibelius songs, this work is the most closely aligned to the German lieder style. It consists of 2 contrasting sections which perfectly match with 2 contrasting musical sections. The first section is a statement about how quickly spring flies by while winter lingers longer. The second section is the reaction of a boy who will enjoy the time spent with his beloved no matter what the season is. The poem is written by Johann Ludwig Runeberg. Runeberg's writing style was short lines, simple words, and easy forms. and this song is a very good example of his writing style. Let's read the translation before listening to the song. Spring flees fast. Spring flees fast, summer even faster. Autumn lingers long, winter even longer. Soon, fair cheeks, will you fade and bloom no more. The boy replied, even on autumn days, spring's memories bring joy. Even on winter day, summer's harvest is in store. Let spring flee and cheeks fade. Now we shall just love, we shall just kiss. Very simple lines and words, right? Now let me sing for you Woorden flikta hastigt. Flickan kom ifrån sin älsklingsmöte is one of Sibelius' most famous songs. The poem was written by Runberry. Again, Sibelius' preference for intensive tragedy is obvious in this song, and he intensifies the drama with powerful musical tools such as octaves, syncopations, dense texture in the piano accompaniment, and shifts between major and minor chords. There are two characters in this song, a mother and a daughter. The daughter tells a lie to her mother about her secretive meeting with her lover, and the key is D-flat major. Later, the daughter finally tells the truth to her mother about what truly happened to her, and the key becomes C-sharp minor. Sibelius reinforced the plot so appropriately by shifting the keys. You are looking at the piano introduction of the song. You will hear from the following recording that it is the reminiscent of Tchaikovsky. This theme repeats throughout the song and becomes an emotional statement of the daughter. Again, I'll read the translation for you before you listen to the song. The girl returned from meeting her lover. The girl returned from meeting her lover. Came back with red hands. Her mother asked, "Why are your hands so red, my child?" The girl replied, "I have been plucking roses and pricked my hands on the thorns." Again, she returned from meeting her lover, came back with red lips. Her mother asked, "Why are your lips so red, my child?" The girl replied, "I have been eating raspberries and stained my lips with the juice." Again, she returned from meeting her lover, came back with pale cheeks. Her mother asked, "Why are your cheeks so pale, my child?" The girl replied, "Prepare a grave, mother. Hide me there and set up a cross, and on the cross carve these words." Once she came home with red hands, for they had turned red between her lover's hands. Once she came home with red lips, for they had turned red beneath her lover's lips. The last time she came home with pale cheeks, for they had turned pale at her lover's unfaithfulness. Sibelius songs being written mostly in Swedish and with orchestra writing techniques prevented his songs from being widely performed outside of Scandinavian countries. However, these characteristics made Sibelius' song unique from the standard song literature. Even with unconventional and challenging writing styles, Sibelius created beautiful melodies and intensive dramas still attractive to performers and audiences. Through my research on Sibelius songs, I have found his genius orchestral writings are still valid in his songs, even with some challenges in singing. Therefore, his songs need to be reevaluated for their quality and deserve more frequent performances and studies. I hope this video contains helpful information about Sibelius songs. Thank you very much for watching this video.